The entire production crew froze when Simon Cowell stood up from the judges' table and stopped the show. The cameras kept rolling, but no one knew what to do. The audience fell silent. The other judges turned to look at him, confusion written across their faces. And on stage, a young deaf dancer stood perfectly still, her eyes closed, her arms suspended in mid-motion, as if time itself had stopped with Simon's voice. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't in the script. This was live television, and Simon Cowell had just broken every rule. But what happened in the next 5 minutes would become one of the most powerful moments in America's Got Talent history. A moment that would remind the world that behind the sharp critiques and the brutal honesty, Simon Cowell possessed something far more valuable: the ability to recognize true courage when he saw it. Her name was Maya Chen, 23 years old, born profoundly deaf. And she had traveled across the country to dance on the biggest stage of her life, in front of millions of viewers, without being able to hear a single note of the music she was moving to. But no one in that theater, not the judges, not the audience, not even the crew backstage, was prepared for what Simon would do when her performance ended. Maya had been deaf since birth. Her parents discovered it when she was 6 months old, when she didn't respond to sounds that would make other babies turn their heads. The doctors said she had less than 5% hearing in both ears. They said she would face challenges. They said certain dreams might not be possible. But Maya's mother refused to let her daughter be defined by what she couldn't do. She enrolled Maya in a dance studio when she was 4 years old, not because she expected her to become a dancer, but because she wanted her to feel music in a different way. Through vibrations. Through movement. Through the rhythm her body could sense even when her ears could not hear. The other children in the class would giggle when Maya didn't follow the tempo perfectly. The instructor would gently correct her, showing her how to feel the beat through the wooden floor beneath her feet. And slowly, year after year, Maya began to understand something profound. Music wasn't just sound. It was energy. It was emotion. It was something that lived beyond the ears. By the time she was 16, Maya had developed her own style of dance. She would place her hand on the speaker to feel the bass. She would watch the musician's hands to anticipate rhythm changes. She would close her eyes and let her body become an instrument of its own, translating vibrations into movement with a precision that astonished everyone who saw her perform. But dancing in a small studio in Portland was one thing. Walking onto the stage of America's Got Talent, in front of Simon Cowell and 3 other world-famous judges, was something else entirely. When Maya's audition number was called, she walked onto that massive red stage wearing a flowing lavender dress that moved like water with every step. Her long dark hair was pulled back, revealing the small cochlear implant behind her right ear. She carried no props. No backup dancers. Just herself, the stage, and a piece of music she had chosen specifically because of its powerful bass line, a composition she could feel in her bones. Simon leaned forward slightly, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He had seen thousands of auditions. He had heard every sob story, every dream, every plea for validation. And while he respected passion, he valued talent more. The question in his mind was simple: could she actually dance, or was this just going to be another emotional moment that lacked technical skill? Maya stepped to the center of the stage and closed her eyes. The music began. A deep, resonant bass line that you could feel in your chest even if you were sitting in the back row. And then Maya started to move. It wasn't just dancing. It was something deeper. Her body became a visual translation of sound, every gesture perfectly timed, every turn executed with a grace that seemed impossible for someone who couldn't hear the melody. She didn't just dance to the music. She became the music. The audience was mesmerized. Howie Mandel leaned over to Heidi Klum and whispered something. Sofia Vergara had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide. And Simon? Simon hadn't moved. He was completely still, his eyes locked on Maya, his expression shifting from curiosity to something else. Something softer. Halfway through the performance, Maya executed a series of spins that ended with her dropping to the floor in a controlled fall, her arms extended, her face tilted toward the lights. The bass hit a climactic note, and she rose slowly, her movements synchronized so perfectly with the music that it felt like she was conducting the song with her body. And then, just as the music was building toward its final crescendo, Simon Cowell did something no one expected. He raised his hand and stopped the show. The music cut off abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening. Maya opened her eyes, confusion flickering across her face. The audience gasped. The other judges turned to Simon, stunned. "Stop," Simon said firmly, his voice cutting through the silence. "Stop the music." The producers in the control room were panicking. This wasn't planned. This wasn't in the rundown. You don't stop a performance mid-act on live television. But Simon wasn't asking. He was commanding. Maya stood frozen on stage, her chest rising and falling, her eyes searching for an explanation. Had she done something wrong? Had she failed? The fear in her expression was heartbreaking. Simon stood up from the judges' table. Slowly. Deliberately. He stepped out from behind the desk and began walking toward the stage. The audience was completely silent now. You could hear the sound of his footsteps echoing in the theater. He climbed the steps to the stage and walked directly to Maya. She looked up at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, her hands trembling slightly. Simon stopped in front of her. For a moment, he just looked at her. Then he did something that stunned everyone in that room. He placed his hand gently over his heart, and then he extended it toward her, a gesture of connection, of recognition, of respect. "Do you know why I stopped the music?" Simon asked softly, his voice picked up by the stage microphones. Maya shook her head, her lip quivering. "Because," Simon continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I wanted everyone in this room and everyone watching at home to understand something. What you just did wasn't just a dance. It was a masterclass in courage. It was a reminder that the most powerful performances don't come from hearing the music. They come from feeling it." The audience erupted. Not with polite applause, but with a roar of emotion that shook the entire theater. People were standing, crying, clapping so hard their hands hurt. Simon turned to face the audience, his hands still resting near his heart. "You see, we spend so much time in this industry talking about talent, about technical skill, about perfection. But what Maya just showed us is something far more important. She showed us that art isn't about what you have. It's about what you do with what you have." He turned back to Maya, who was now openly crying, her hands covering her face. "You didn't just dance beautifully," Simon said. "You danced with a level of artistry and precision that most people with perfect hearing could never achieve. You turned limitation into strength. And that, Maya, is what true talent looks like. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what happens next will leave you speechless." Simon reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. He handed it to Maya. "I wrote this during your performance," he said, "because I wanted you to have something tangible to remember this moment." Maya unfolded the paper with shaking hands. On it, in Simon's handwriting, were just 5 words. "You made me feel everything." That's when Simon Cowell, the man known for being the toughest judge in television, the man who had made contestants cry with his harsh critiques, the man who prided himself on emotional control, did something no one had ever seen him do on live television. He cried. Not a single tear. Not a subtle glistening in his eyes. He cried. Real, unfiltered emotion that he didn't try to hide or wipe away. The camera zoomed in on his face, capturing the moment in brutal, beautiful honesty. Simon Cowell, vulnerable. Simon Cowell, human. Maya reached out and hugged him. It was spontaneous, unplanned, and absolutely genuine. And Simon hugged her back, his hand on the back of her head, holding her like she was something precious. The other judges were standing now. Howie, Heidi, Sophia, all of them openly emotional. The audience was a sea of tears and applause. And somewhere in the control room, the producers had stopped worrying about the schedule and started realizing they were witnessing television history. When Simon and Maya finally pulled apart, he took her hand and led her back to the center of the stage. "Finish your performance," Simon said. "Not because you have to, but because the world deserves to see the rest of what you were going to give us." The music started again. This time, when Maya danced, it felt different. The weight of fear was gone. She moved with even more freedom, more power, more joy. And when she hit the final pose, the entire theater exploded. All 4 judges gave her a standing ovation. But it was Simon who walked back onto the stage, who stood in front of the judges' table, and who did something he had only done a handful of times in the history of the show. He slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down from the ceiling. Maya collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Simon walked back onto the stage and lifted her to her feet, his arm around her shoulders as the confetti fell around them like a blessing. "You are going straight to the live shows," Simon said into his microphone, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm going to make sure the world never forgets what you did here tonight." After the show, backstage, Simon found Maya sitting alone in the green room, still in her performance dress, the golden confetti stuck in her hair. He sat down next to her without saying a word. After a moment, Maya turned to him. "Why did you stop the music?" she asked, her voice soft. "Really?" Simon thought about it. Then he said, "Because I realized that I was watching something I had never seen before. And I didn't want to miss a single second of it by staying behind that desk, pretending to be a judge. I wanted to be present. I wanted to honor what you were giving us." Maya nodded, tears streaming down her face again. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I know," Simon said. "That's why it was so powerful. You were terrified, and you did it anyway. That's not just talent, Maya. That's heroism." He stood up and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You changed something in me tonight," he said. "You reminded me why I do this job. Not to find the next pop star or the next viral sensation, but to find people like you. People who remind the rest of us what it means to be human." 3 months later, Maya performed in the finals. She didn't win the competition, but it didn't matter. She had already won something far more valuable. She had proven to herself, and to millions of people around the world, that limitations are only as powerful as the belief you give them. And Simon? Simon never forgot that night. In interviews afterward, when people asked him about his most memorable moments on the show, he would always mention Maya. "She taught me something I had forgotten," he said in one interview. "That the best performances aren't the ones that are technically perfect. They're the ones that make you feel something you didn't expect to feel." Maya didn't just dance that night. She opened a door. And once you walk through a door like that, you can never go back to seeing the world the same way. The video of Maya's audition has been viewed over 300 million times. It's been shared across every social media platform. It's been used in schools to teach students about perseverance. And every single time someone watches it, they see the same thing: the moment Simon Cowell stopped being a judge and became a human being. Sometimes, the most powerful moments in life aren't the ones where everything goes according to plan. They're the moments where someone has the courage to stop, to step outside the script, and to simply be present for another person's truth. Maya didn't just change the perspective of everyone in that theater. She changed Simon Cowell. And in doing so, she reminded all of us that the greatest performances aren't measured by perfection. They're measured by heart. The morning after the audition aired, Maya woke up to discover her life had changed completely. Her phone was flooded with messages from people around the world. Deaf children sending videos of themselves dancing. Parents thanking her for giving their kids hope. Teachers asking permission to show her performance in their classrooms. But the message that meant the most came from Simon himself. It was simple, only 3 sentences. "You didn't just inspire people last night. You changed what's possible. Thank you for reminding me why this matters." Maya framed that message. She hung it in her dance studio, right next to the notes Simon had written on stage. 2 pieces of paper that represented the moment her biggest fear became her greatest triumph. Years later, when asked about that night, Maya said something profound. I didn't dance to prove I could do it despite being deaf. I danced to prove that being deaf was never a limitation in the first place. Music isn't just sound. It's feeling. And feeling has no barriers. Subscribe and share this story, because moments like this deserve to be remembered forever.